Hey friends, welcome back to Lead Speak. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Judy. We're so glad you're here. Whether you've been tuning in since season 1 or this is your first episode, thanks for making space in your day for conversations that matter.
This is the podcast for school-based SLPs who want to think differently about leadership because we know leadership isn't about title, it's about your impact.
And today's episode is a good one. We're talking with Natalie Crow, SLP coordinator at Richardson Independent School District, about what it really looks like to turn values into action.
She's built systems that do more than manage workload. They create space for real support, collaboration, and growth. It's good for students, and it's smart for recruiting and retaining passionate speech-language pathologists.
She shares how she draws from tools like PLCs, leadership books, and values-based decision-making to grow leaders and build a culture people want to be part of.
So if you know someone who is looking for ways to make their team more sustainable, or someone who's got that quiet leadership spark, share this episode with them.
And be sure to follow Lead Speak wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the conversations coming your way this season.
So let's jump in. Here's the episode with Natalie Crow.
Well, hey, Natalie, how are you today?
I'm great, Judy. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. We are very happy to welcome our guest on today's episode, Natalie Crow. And you've heard a little bit about her. She works in the Richardson Independent School District, which is in the North Texas area. And Richardson ISD, from my personal experience, has a long tradition of continuous improvement and trying to approach excellence in SLP service delivery. But in recent years, even more so, and that could have a little bit to do with current leadership. So we're very excited, Natalie, to talk to you. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much. I'll try not to get confused which Natalie you're talking to.
Okay, so we've got Natalie Crow and Nat, we'll call her Nat LeBrun.
Just Nat. Like B1 and B2 from Bananas and Pajamas.
We know who you live with, preschooler. Okay, so let's get started. Natalie, you began your SLP journey in Richardson ISD, and you're still in Richardson ISD. And so there's some staying power there, and that means that there is something magic for you about Richardson ISD and what you're able to contribute. Talk to us about what it meant for you to become the district's first lead SLP.
Yeah, I did. I started my career in Richardson. I was a CFY in 2011. I had to go back and do that math. Started my career at a campus called Big Springs Elementary, which is super north in the district. It was a really special place for me at the time. I will never forget Mary Dustin, who was the SLP coordinator at the time, called me completely out of the blue. I'll never forget, I was at the gym, things that you do before you have kids. And she was calling me and I looked down. It was like 7:00 at night. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is Mary calling me? And I got off whatever I was doing and I called her back and she was like, I'm going to bring on a lead SLP and I just think you need to do it. And I was a little floored. I was shocked. I was so early in my career. I think I'd been at it for 5 years. Mary, before she was coordinator, did a lot of autism assessment in the district. And I had some tough kids at my campus. And so she and I had spent quite a bit of time together collaborating on these students. And I guess she just saw something in me. Which was a huge honor. I think it's also taught me in my leadership journey to pounce on a leader when you see one. Like, seniority does not make a leader. Years of experience often don't define a leader. I was honored to be considered at that time. It was a tough decision to leave my campus. But it was really special that she saw that in me so early in my career.
That's so awesome. So for the people that listen to this, they might not know, before we do the recording of the actual episode, we always have a pre-interview because oftentimes we don't know the person that we're interviewing personally. We just see them online or whatever. In this case, Natalie, I didn't know you before this. And so we spent I say probably a better part of an hour is just chatting it up. And I think what's has been really cool is to get to know your story and how many points of similarities we have with our leadership journey and where we are today. So I'm just super psyched that you are going to be talking to us today about how you've been able to build this role for your district and culture. But I think I would love for you to share a little bit about your why. Like, why did you decide to step into this role, not only so like early on in your career, but to go from being campus based to all of a sudden being admin based?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up as little baby CFY in Richardson when our systems were very different. Mary was the coordinator. She was a one-man show. I had a lovely supervisor who's still in the district. She was phenomenal. She adored me. But she had a lot of other jobs in the district. Her role was really to fulfill those required supervision hours. Really, the person who taught me everything I needed to know about special education was a resource teacher at my campus. Her name is Stacy. She's still one of my dearest, dearest friends. I was so fortunate at that time to be taken under her wing. She really taught me everything I needed to know about the special education world, how to lead an ARD, all of the things. I had a couple of good friends that were centralized classroom teachers, but other than that, like, I was by myself. I was alone. It was isolating. It was huge work, long hours. I was recreating the wheel on everything because I didn't know any different. How do you? I occasionally saw the rest of the team of SLPs, but it was this vast sea of human beings. So it was intimidating and it was overwhelming. And I really just kind of stuck to my own. I was working really long hours. I didn't feel great about my therapy. I didn't feel particularly effective. And shortly before Mary pulled me into leadership, I had sort of decided this was not a long-term stop for me. Like, this would not be sustainable forever. There's no way I can keep up these long hours. I had decided, like, there's no way. Like, I will be short for the world in this career. So then when Mary brought me on, she actually brought me on, I was half-time in my like lead role, and I was half-time at a different elementary school. And I kind of realized, okay, wait, maybe this is the chance. Maybe I can make an impact on people's desire to stay. Maybe I can make this career sustainable. Maybe this is my chance to make a difference, because I do believe in what's happening here. I do believe in what's happening for kids. I do believe that the role of the school-based speech pathologist is an incredible one and a special one. So I didn't really have all the answers at the time, but I knew that that would be my focus pretty immediately, that if I was going to do this, that I was going to set out to make it a more sustainable career, a place where people wanted to stay.
Okay, so that is amazing. You're making both of our hearts very full of joy as you talk about the special attraction to working as a school-based SLP and making a difference and sustaining quality services for children. So all that is very cool. We want you to talk a little bit more about what you thought about and how you built this infrastructure for support for not only the new SLPs, but all the SLPs. And that's a big question because you've spent years designing it. But talk just about your framework and the big pieces or the big rocks of designing that structure of support.
So when Mary brought me on, she shared a pretty clear vision that we needed to do two things. We needed to figure out how to get the staff more support. And we needed to figure out how to put together some kind of system to measure workload. She was struggling at the time to figure out, we've got I can't remember exactly how many at the time, around 80 SLPs across 54 campuses. And she was struggling to figure out how to best allocate our resources. So she saw those two pieces as like the start to that journey. She really tasked me with the workload piece. And I worked through that. And then we started asking ourselves how to get SLPs more support too. And it was super interesting. I'll never forget the first large group SLP meeting when she announced that I was going to be in this position. And boy, they just descended on me. Like there was no like having to figure out that they needed support. I mean, they were lined up around the corner with questions for me that I had no clue how to answer. Like they were very clear very quickly that they could not get the support they needed. They could not get help problem solving. And so that's when I said, oh, okay. Like, and Mary and I sat around and we were like, what is this going to look like? What are these structures of support going to look like? It was through the workload system in its infancy that we figured out where we had some wiggle room and where we had some space. So together, Mary and I identified 4 SLPs at the time who we thought also really demonstrated a lot of leadership potential. We identified 1 per feeder patterns. We have 4 high schools in Richardson ISD. So that felt like the most natural way to do that. And asked them to join the team. We were able to carve out a little bit of their time with that workload model to come on and join the team. I think that's really when we got to sit around the table and start to do some actual visioning about what support actually looked like. And then after a full semester of me being in my lead SLP role, Mary got to interview for a director position. And she said, okay, well, you're going to interview for the coordinator position. And I was like, Mary, I've been doing this for 2 seconds. But I did, and I got it. And so there I was that next fall. I was the coordinator. I had 4 lead SLPs. Mary was tasked with a lot of different work, and I was kind of left to figure it out. So we set out to figure out what that was going to look like. That was kind of the first step, and that's kind of how we got going.
I mean, that's a really critical first step, right? So you got a little bit, very little bit of kind of like a guided entry into that role, right? Where you were able to like make some initial relationships with your team that might look different than like a caseload SLP to a caseload SLP relationship, right? And then it sounded like your coordinator at the time had already kind of put together like a vision of, where she wanted to take things. So I'm sure that was really helpful when you got to sit in the big chair on that first day.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so great. So that leads me to a question about supervision and appraisal, because we all know that that's like the supervision piece, and certainly the professional appraisal piece is one that is done differently everywhere, right? And that can have a huge impact on your team's culture and your team's reputation. So you had shared with us that in your role, you have been able to get back the SLP's staff appraisal from campus administrators. So tell us, why is it that you advocated for this model, and how did you facilitate such a big task of doing 80 plus people's appraisal?
Yeah. So as I got started with that leadership team, one of the first things we decided was that they needed to go visit campuses and see people, see their therapy, provide some opportunities for growth and feedback. So we all went out. We all went out to go see our people, and we found that our practices were wildly inconsistent. I mean, it was a little jarring. It's a little jarring. Service delivery decisions, disability determination decisions, what evidence-based practice look like in therapy with different groups, caseload size, support. I mean, I knew that, I think deep down, but then to go out and see it became very clear that that's what we needed to do. And listen, principals are phenomenal. We have the most incredible group of administrators in Richardson, and they love our SLPs. They adore them. But at the end of the day, you can only someone who understands the job, only someone who is also an SLP, who truly understands the systems and structures of support that you need, it has the skill set to do that. So while principals in Richardson at the time and now are incredible and lovely and so supportive, principals didn't have what they needed to effectively support an SLP or grow an SLP or say, maybe you should be doing this instead of that. So it became clear very quickly and very early on that if we were going to effectively support this team, that we had to have some way of measuring what is the role of this SLP in the school setting, and how do we give feedback in a consistent and effective way. And let me tell you what, that was hard. It was really hard. We had SLPs in the district at the time who had been in the district 10, 20, 25 years, and another SLP had never stepped foot on their campus, had never seen their therapy. And that's scary. And it's hard to then come in, especially in my role as a baby leader, with my grand total of 5.5 years of experience or whatever it was at the time, to come in and be like, didn't you want some feedback from me? It was really hard. And so it was a major mindset shift. It was a major culture shift, and it took time.
Did you work on that culture shift explicitly and overtly, or is it something that as you put systems in place, you tried to shift the culture so that it wasn't a gotcha thing, it was a support thing?
Yeah, it took time. It was about trust, right? I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of trust in place because when they needed something, when they needed help problem solving, the existing support structures weren't there. And so a big part of getting to a place where I could put this appraisal system in place, and I think I can talk about what that looks like in a second, but a huge part of it was just initially making sure that, like, when they called, someone answered the phone, that when they had a question, it got answered. And that was a big part of this lead SLP structure by feeder pattern. Everyone was assigned, the leads were assigned a group of SLPs, and that was your person. And so for the first time ever, they had a person, someone they could call who they knew would get back to them, knew had the capacity to answer their questions. And so honestly, like, that was a big part before we could move into the appraisal piece, is just getting to a place where we were a group that could be trusted.
You know, I think that it's really, really important that being a part of the district's organizational hierarchy or structure in terms of your leadership team is something that we just need to turn the spotlight on for a minute. Because when Mary Dustin, your predecessor, was coordinator, she was flying solo. There was no way for her to get out to campuses, and there was no way for her to answer all the phone calls.
No way.
And so having a team.
And that wasn't her fault.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. She's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, she picked you, so she's, awesome. But no, but Mary was awesome before you. But in terms of the org chart, it's really important for SLP leaders to understand that things will go better if you don't have to fly solo. And you started out with release time. So your leads were, your your leadership team was doing caseload and leadership, lead SLP in their feeder pattern. And so you just sort of inched it in, it sounds like, to the structure. So young new leaders, just take note of what Natalie did in her sneaky way to get a leadership team.
I'm not sure. I thought I was sneaky at the time, but yeah, I mean, you've got to get creative with what you have, right?
And I think there's also something to be said that you as a leader have to be realistic to the people that you're managing up, right? In regards to what you can get to and what you can prioritize. If you're a one-person show, then what are your non-negotiables as a departmental leader, right? And at the end of the day, like things like on-site campus visits, team meetings, that kind of stuff will fall below the line.
No, you're in survival mode.
Absolutely.
That's it, all the time. There's
All the
none of that.
And there's not a lot of opportunity to breathe. And then that's when you start to knock on the door of burnout, because you may not be given opportunities to work on the things that bring you energy and excitement and just like fuel for your heart and for your brain.
Well, and that's when the staff reaches burnout. If they can't get the support they need to be effective, the turnover is going to be incredible. And it was at the time.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. That's awesome that you're able to grow that out. Those vertical patterns are so great, so that you could have your secondary SLPs talk to your elementary SLPs and share like, hey, life in secondary looks like
powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
It sounds to me like you turned appraisals into an opportunity for supervision and mentoring and coaching, rather than a one-time, once a year appraisal event where you do all the things that teachers are required to do, turn in your goals for the year, have your walkthroughs, have your summative appraisal. But it sounds like with your portfolio approach that you have something a little bit different for SLPs that leads to that support and doing supervision, mentoring, coaching through your appraisal process. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So when I decided that's what was needed, that we needed an appraisal tool that was specific to the role of the school-based speech pathologist, I remember sitting down in front of my computer and being like, okay, but where to start? This got approved. So, okay, now I have to do this. And I just remember Googling it really quick, and boom, there was ASHA put out a tool. It's been several years ago now, but they put together a focus group. I think it was some SLP leaders across the nation, and they pushed out a tool called the PACE tool. And that's really where we started. It is a really great tool for helping you consider, okay, what does our national organization say is the role of the school-based speech pathologist, and what should we be expecting? From there, I really wanted to try to align the approach similar to that of T-TESS, which is how teachers are appraised in the schools, so that the people around us who were needing to support this initiative of mine understood. And so if I could align it to T-TESS and speak their language, then it should be well received, right? A big part of that too was developing a rubric. The PACE tool did not provide a rubric, and that was really crucial and really essential. So we put together a rubric. And at this point, our appraisal tool has been through a few iterations. But at the end of the day, what it looks like, whether you are in year 0 or year 30 of your career, and this is a big thing, you are provided the same structures of support and supervision and feedback. So we meet with you in the fall for goal setting. We try to be really intentional about goal setting. I feel like sometimes goal setting gets this stigma of like, oh, I'm going to set my goals again this year. Really what we have our staff do is look at their appraisal from the previous year and ask themselves, okay, based on that feedback, where can I be setting goals? Look at their caseload, look at anything coming up that year for our staff who maybe are really incredible. Let's set goals around training others and what that looks like and giving back to the community. But we like to try to sit with our staff in their goal setting and make their action sets super tangible, and also ask them, how can I come alongside you in your growth? A lot of times we have ideas or access to resources or things they may not be thinking of. So you need to get really good in, your phonological therapy. Okay, well, I'm going to connect you with so and so and so and so and so and so, and you are going to go observe. They're going to come observe you. We're going to write a grant and get you to that conference. Do you know what? I think I have a material for you in our central library. So they've got to feel supported in those goals. And like, we're giving them what they need to be successful in those goals. So it's really a two-way street when it comes to accountability and responsibility for those goals. So we do that goal setting. We do our best to support them in achieving their goals throughout the year. We observe therapy. We use a very specific observation form with written feedback that looks at things like, how are you incorporating the curriculum in your therapy? What evidence-based practices are you using? Scaffolds, feedback, visuals. What does behavior management look like? All of the pieces that we know are so important in the schools, they're getting very specific feedback from us, written feedback. We do get principal feedback via a Google form. Principals have a lot of really incredible things to say about professionalism and leading arts and conflict management and those types of things. So we get principal feedback. And then the SLPs put together a portfolio for us. So the portfolio has several components. We look at their IEPs, we look at their evaluations, we look at their progress reports. And then from there, they get to add some different things as well. So if they want to show us a new data collection system that they're using, they get to share that. If they want to just upload a nice note that they got from a parent, so that we can celebrate them in that way. And so we spend time with the portfolio, and then we take our appraisal tool that has several domains, all specific to the role of the school-based speech pathologist, from evaluation to therapy to professional communication, all of the things. And we put together their appraisal. So they get that appraisal, they get a chance to review it and process that super specific feedback. And then we meet with them for summative conference in the spring. Just finished summative conferences a few weeks ago. And really, it's my favorite time of year because I get to sit with the staff. We all get to sit with the staff and celebrate them for all of their accomplishments in a way only another SLP can. And that's special. That's special. And it goes a long way for creating that confidence and that self-efficacy. You need that feedback. You need that boost. But it's also our time to say, okay, like, let's look at your year and let's make some notes about how you can keep growing. And then when they go sit down to write their goals the next year, they have their notes from their summative conference that we worked on collectively, and boom, they're launched into another year of growth. So, like I said, the transition to that supervision tool was not particularly easy. Some people desired that feedback more than others. But through time, people either decided to stay and be a part of that culture, or move on. And now we're there. We've arrived. It is a very, very successful tool for establishing consistency across the district. And that's a big piece of it, right? Is that consistency in your practices. That's how you rest easy at night, knowing that every child's getting what they need, is when you know that there's consistency out there in how we're determining disabilities and how we're delivering services and what therapy looks like. I think that's a big part of that appraisal and supervision process.
This is such a cool way to go beyond the thanks for all that you do compliment that I think gets given, especially in education, when you're just not quite sure exactly what they all do. But if you say thanks for all that you do, you kind of cover all your bases, right? But through this portfolio approach, you can give a very authentic and very pointed compliment, right? Because you have evidence, in front of you. And I think like one of the hardest thing as a leader of a fairly large team is that it is impossible for you to know each person's daily impact with, from where you sit, even with your best efforts. And this portfolio approach really brings forward evidence, collects evidence for you to look over, and then being able to really give like a very honest and real and tangible compliment and feedback.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So, like, what's a piece of advice that you would share with others in regards to going down this route? Like, like you said, like some people were on board with it, some people were not. It took a lot of time. Like, what's a lesson that you learned that if you were to rewind the tape, you would maybe do differently?
I think like you just have to be honest that it's going to be hard and that it's going to feel different. I think establishing that trust first is super important. And then once I think you enter into the process, something we kind of learned the hard way the first few years is as a leadership team that we had to do more intentional calibration in the type of feedback we were giving and how we were giving ratings on appraisals. We had to sit around the table a lot and kind of say, well, I would rate this, let's look at the rubric. I would call this a 3. I would call this a 4. And really sit with that consistency. We do at this point change supervisors every year for our staff so they get an opportunity to experience someone who maybe has different expertise, has a different feedback style. And it can get really tricky if from year to year, your ratings, your feedback, whatever it is, looks wildly different from one person to another. So I think I talk with our leadership team a lot with the lead SLPs just about speaking with one voice. And it took time and an intentional effort and leadership work around the table to get us to that place, because that's a big part of that trust piece too. They can't feel like they get different answers depending on who they call.
So let's switch gears a little bit, because when we chatted, you had a lot to say about professional development. And when we're thinking about culture, if we're trying to build a team culture where our students benefit because we have such a great, strong team, professional development is definitely at the heart of it. But the fact of the matter is, today in America, right, we're looking at difficult financial budgets for public education, right? And professional development funds may be spent otherwise to cover more kind of like more other costs. Let's just say it that way, right? But yet at Richardson ISD, you have reimagined what professional learning and collaboration for your team looks like. So can you talk to us a little bit about the model that you've adopted and how it really helps support building this like super strong culture and value system?
I would love to. I mean, first and foremost, we do provide a series of what I would say is like more traditional professional learning every year. We're very, very fortunate to be supported by the district and the department and being able to do CEUs for all of our professional learning, which is huge for your staff. CEUs are expensive. And so worked hard to do a lot of education with my leadership, and we are so fortunate that they understand how important that is. So being able to provide those CEUs, we do longer workshop style courses depending on the goals that they've set, depending on district trends, what's happening in the field. And then we also made the shift a couple of years ago doing some like short 1 hour lunch and learns too, which is really nice. I think when we have just a tidbit of learning that we need them to get, to not have to pull them off campus, find time, get them some of that time while they're quickly eating their lunch, and then they can go. So we do provide a series of more traditional professional development each year, tap into the staff and all of their different incredible expertises to build that. But I would say where the majority of the learning and creativity and collaboration happens is in our PLC structure. So professional learning communities were something that the district rolled out, again, very early on in my leadership journey. And it became a district expectation that anyone, regardless of their role in the district, participated in a PLC. So as often happens in districts that have mostly teachers, I sat back and had to ask myself, okay, what does this mean for us? What is that going to look like? The first year, SLPs were asked to find a PLC on campus and go be a part of it. You have a lot to contribute. Go be a part of it. That did not go so well. Talk about feeling isolated in your skills and who you are, and no one in struggling to educate about your role. So that was super clear. And we kind of said, okay, we tried that. Instead, let's operate like the music teachers do and the art teachers. This concept of singletons in the PLC design, which is what SLPs are, right? For the most part, there's one or two out on campus. They're considered a singleton. And let's bring the singletons together in PLCs. So we put PLCs together. We identified PLC leaders. We organized by feeder pattern for elementary, a secondary PLC, which, those SLPs are a special breed. Natalie, an early childhood PLC, and then a PLC for SLPs that served a lot of person programming. And I met with the PLC leaders for the first time and said, we want y'all to be collaborative, and kind of got it going. They met in their PLCs for the first few times. And then COVID hit. And we can talk a lot about COVID, but this PLC structure saved our team in COVID. I will never forget those first weeks, bringing all the PLC leaders together. They're the stakeholders, right? I know we're going to talk about the multiplier effect here in a little while, but they were my stakeholders. They were the ones who I needed bought in to whatever the plan was going to be. And so I brought them all together and we talked for a long time, and they said, okay, well, how about instead of us each being responsible for our own caseloads, we just work in our PLCs to make sure every child gets what they need. And I was like, great, let's do that. And so out of that came this new level of collaboration and support from one another. And they're creating lesson plans online that they're sharing and using. And okay, I'll give you this. Let me take this kid. You take that kid. And I just remember sitting there after a couple months into COVID going, what would we have done without these teams? How would I have gotten buy-in? How would all of the kids have gotten seen? I mean, they were able to come to the team and say, okay, based on my family situation, I can see kids from 8 to 10. So give me the kids who are available from 8 to 10. Okay, based on my family situation, I can see kids from 4 to 6. What kids can be seen from 4 to 6? And I mean, they just magically melded together to make it happen. I remember being so overwhelmed by how they took care of each other in that moment. And so when we sort of exited out of COVID, we had this incredible structure in place of these SLPs that were on these teams that cared for one another and wanted to support one another. And there was so much naturalistic learning happening as they talked about kids, as they developed resources. And let's be honest, there's incredible professional learning out there, but we learn the most from one another. We learn the most from one another. So Since then, the PLC model has, I think, really become the cornerstone of who we are as a team. PLCs now serve two purposes. The first being for SLPs to be in authentic relationship with one another. Some of a bulk of the research out there about people's desire to stay in jobs says that people like to go back to places where they have friends. It sounds so simple, but when you have a staff of 80 serving across 50 campuses, it's actually quite difficult. They're not together on a daily basis. They're not working together on a daily basis. And so that's the first purpose of PLCs, is for them to just be in relationship with one another, to get to be around people who know their work and understand their work, that can celebrate them when things are going really well and relate when there's tough, hard things. The second purpose of PLCs is to meet the needs of the department. So the expectation for all professional learning communities is that they identify a need in the department and that they work together to meet it. So some of the most incredible resources in our district have come out of PLCs. We have multiple TEKS-based language curriculum units that can carry you through a 9 weeks. We have parent resources. We have homework calendars. Our secondary PLC wrote an incredible TEKS-based progress monitoring tool. One of our PLCs wrote the cutest series of pragmatic lessons based on the Pixar shorts. And this is where, like, taking it all the way back to where we started about my leadership goal of making this a place where people want to come to, want to stay, are capable of staying. This is when my leadership philosophy, I started saying, well, many hands make light work. And I found myself saying it over and over and over. If we can all actively contribute, if I can be a part of one piece, of one part of one project, and all 80 SLPs are also bought into this culture of active contribution, then my work just got 10 times easier. And they see that. And it's really cool. It's really cool. It's really special.
For you, how do the terms values and culture relate to each other? Are they synonyms, or are they different with some overlap? How does this show up for you as a leader in Richardson?
One of the first leadership studies I did with the lead SLPs was Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. And as we kind of sat around as a team and asked ourselves those hard questions, who are we? What do we believe? What are my core values as a leader? That book really drives you to say, what are your values as a team? And then Brene says to operationalize your values, so that to then say, okay, and this is what this looks like in action. So we sat around and did that very early on. We have a set of 5 values that we try to put all of our work through that lens. I'm constantly putting them up in front of the staff. Our new hires are handed a piece of cardstock with them on day 1. We try to always bring it back to our values, and whatever decision we're making, whatever we're rolling out, we try to put it through the lens of our values. So we have a set of 5 values that we came up with very early on that have really stuck. They spell shine. So the little light bulb is kind of like our little team symbol, if you will. So those are safe communication. So we tell our staff, you are safe to talk to us. We need you to tell us what you need. And this is a safe place. It's also going to be a safe place for feedback. I'm going to give you feedback, and I expect you to give me feedback. And part of that, it's a 2-way street. I need to know what you need from me so that I can effectively give you what you need. We talk about a healthy balance, which is a big thing in this career. Let's all be honest. We work just as much with our SLPs on helping them reach a place of balance, which means effective systems, efficiency, so that they can give what they need to give to their family and to their friends, and so that they can give to their work what they need to give to their work when they're here. I stands for impact. So we expect them through professional learning communities, through professional learning, to have a constant focus on their impact for kids. The N is nurture. We expect them to nurture one another, to promote kindness, to assume positive intent, and to actively take care of one another. And the E stands for essential. We talk to them a lot about how they are essential to the culture of this district. And part of our role is to educate others about our role so that the district can continue to understand how essential we are. So that's our set of values. And that's the lens through which everything goes. I think from there, I talk about culture a little differently. I think culture is the result of making sure decisions are made through the values. And I think the culture that we promote is a growth mindset, is a culture of what we call all means all, meaning this is not my campus, my kids, my work. This is us, our team, our district, our students. And it is everyone's responsibility to make sure all children get what they need in the district, but also that all SLPs get what they need. And that means taking care of one another. And because of that comes flexibility and collaboration and that culture of active contributions, because many hands make light work. So I think that's kind of how I talk about culture and values, if that answers your question.
So, like, how long, when you guys were going through the Brene Brown book and kind of picking out your values and discussing them, I'm sure you went through a multi-step process to like kind of narrow down her list, Brene's list, because Brene's list is very long, right?
Yes.
Approximately, how much time would you recommend if a leader or a team is looking to go through a similar process? How much time would you recommend that they kind of think through and set aside for this?
Well, I think that's an interesting question because Brene first calls us to look into ourselves, right? And what your personal values are as a leader. And then once you've done that, you are then ready to come around a table of other people who have also identified their own personal values to say, how do all of our unique perspectives on this work come together to meld into a set of values that we can then support for our team? So I think we spent an entire year going through that workbook. Brene has a really incredible workbook that goes alongside that book. And I think it took us a solid year to get there. And then from there, a lot of conversations about making sure we were intentionally coming back to those values as we made decisions. And if the decision, if the project, if the initiative, whatever, did not support that set of values, being okay with letting that go, which is hard, can be hard.
Letting go of what you want to do is really hard. It's really hard, especially if you're a fan of your own great ideas. So I relate to that. Yeah, yeah. So we talked a little bit about looking in the mirror first. And Brene Brown in Dare to Lead has us reflecting on where we fit in relationship to all the different aspects of leadership and strong, authentic leadership. You're the fan of another book called The Multiplier Effect that also, in order to grab the deep application of the multiplier effect involves looking in the mirror first. So talk to us about the multiplier effect for our listeners who are not familiar with the book, and why you think that it's a powerful tool in terms of SLP leadership.
So the Multiplier Effect was the first book that Mary handed me. And she said, you need to read this. I said, okay. And I did. And I don't think I really realized like what the gold in my hands at the time, because from that time, really for the past decade, that book has informed so many of the practices that we have already talked through. The concept in this book, and there's one with the black cover that's specifically for the schools, like tapping the genius inside of your schools. And that's the one I have. And I love that exists, specifically for schools, but it really takes the concept of, in the school system, we're always asked to do more with less. Always. And I think as a leader, if you're not careful, you can really get stuck there. I don't have the resources. I cannot ask them to do one more thing. I won't ask them to do one more thing. I think you can get to a point where you start building up a barrier, a protective barrier around your team with the best intentions. Because as a leader, you're stuck in that place. And I think what the book really helps you move away from is getting unstuck from that and realizing that there is a way to move forward in a productive and a growth-oriented mindset, regardless of that reality that we will always be asked to do more with less. And that's breaking down those walls, those protective walls is, I think, a big part of getting started in that book.
So I thought what was really cool about this book is it gave me a lot of vocabulary for behaviors and aptitudes that I didn't really have like a specific title for. So I appreciate that about this book. It was a pretty easy read overall, but it was also like a difficult read because I was reading through this. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Yep. I certainly have those tendencies and that tendency, right? And so there was one that really jumped out at me, and it was the term accidental diminisher. And here's a quote that I highlighted in my ebook version of this book. It says, quote, "Good intentions may do as much harm as malevolence if they lack understanding," end quote. And that like jumped at me so much because just a few weeks ago, we were talking with our good friend Rachel, the PTSD SLP, about trauma-informed leadership. And the synapses in my brain made a connection between the two, right? About how accidental diminishers might actually may be impeding on your ability to build culture and help your team problem solve for themselves. So can you tell us a little bit about how you might see or how you've seen accidental diminishing from where you stand?
Absolutely. That is the hardest part of that book. Like coming to the realization, oh my gosh, all of these things that I do that I thought were so helpful to everyone around me are harming my team. Like that's a hard pill to swallow. It really is. And this book is the book that I have taken and I now study with the PLC leaders, and watching them kind of go through it and have them do that quiz too and come to that realization. It's it can be some tough stuff. I think, I can only talk about myself, and I definitely have two tendencies when it comes to some of those accidental diminisher tendencies. The first one is the tendency, I think they call it the optimist, the tendency to be overly optimistic. I think very early on in my leadership journey, I took an attitude of it is my responsibility to always have a smile on my face, to be super positive, to tell everyone how great everything was going to be. Because in my mind, if I just did that, they would mirror that behavior, right? That's not what happens. What the book tells us is that actually what happens is they look at you as their leader and think, how can she be so unaware? Like, she has no idea we're struggling. She's just sitting up there in her office thinking everything is so great, and she doesn't even know. She doesn't even know that we're struggling. She doesn't even know we're struggling. Let me tell you what, I had to learn that lesson the hard way with COVID. And we happened to be reading Brené's book at the same time. And all of Brené's work around vulnerability, this concept of embracing the suck. I will never forget sitting on a Zoom. It was the fall that everyone came back. Everyone's in their masks in their office. None of us had seen each other. And I just remember being like, okay, I've read this book now. I know what this toxic positivity does. Okay, now I've read this book from Brené about being vulnerable. And I remember just like taking a deep breath and thinking, okay, it's time for me to do that. And I remember sitting on that Zoom and saying, I'm so sorry. This is so hard. There's nothing I can do to make it better, but we're here for you. I'm going to tear up. I was overwhelmed by the amount of positive feedback I got after that meeting. People texting me, emailing me, calling me, and saying like, why is no one saying that to us? Like, that is what I needed to hear. Like, thank you for just saying that you know that it's hard. And I would say like that was the turning point for me. That was sort of the catalyst in really trying to shut down that accidental diminisher quality in myself. Like, that's not what they need. They need me to validate the struggle. They need me to be real and honest. And there's obviously an incredible place for positivity and productive mindset, but it's got to be balanced with being able to validate that things can be hard sometimes. I think the other accidental diminisher quality that I think all of my PLC leaders identified in themselves, and I see it too, and I think it's a major SLP tendency, especially when we're trying to grow new SLPs, is this concept of being the rescuer. And thinking, oh, you are so tired, you're so overwhelmed, like, just give me that. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it for you. Do you know what? I know that conversation with your principal sounds really hard. I'm just going to call them. I'm just going to call them for you. Do you know what? I'll go to that ARD. I'll do it. Don't worry about it. Oh, that eval sounds really difficult. Let me just give it to someone else. And realizing that instead of being supportive, what we are doing is taking away their ability to build their confidence, to problem solve, to be able to do hard things. And guess what? We're also building a culture where the expectation is that when I have something hard to do, that you're going to handle it for me. So I think, talking about those diminishing qualities, I think those are the two I see in myself that I've really had to actively work on.
I think that for the people listening, if they were in a position of leadership, either formally or informally, when COVID happened, they can certainly deeply resonate with your approach to talking about the suck. Because you're right. Like, to say otherwise, to not acknowledge the 3,000-pound elephant sitting in the room with us, I think we would have missed the point. Right. And so your willingness, but also like your hyper awareness for the need to do that is very striking. It's very striking. And then it opens a beautiful, unexpected door to build that trust with your people. That's hard to do though. That's especially if you're virtual, right? You're away from your people, especially if your team is so used to coming together and celebrating in person. And
It's so hard. Oh man. Yeah. And I'm one that feeds off the room and how people are looking at me. And oh my gosh, it was a hard time, man. I cannot believe we made it on the other side of that.
I mean, I look back at pictures during the COVID time.
Ah,
You know, I have this one. My husband took a picture of me. It had been a long day. I don't think I ever worked longer hours. I think I started working at like 7 a.m. I didn't stop working until 7 p.m. most days. And my husband took a picture of me. I'm out in our backyard and I am face down onto our patio set, just like this in the pillow. I might be screaming into the pillow. I don't know. It's a silent picture, right? But just
mhm.
this visual of just like exhaustion because like
Yeah.
no guardrails, no one knew what to do. You were just kind of hoping for the best. And then the next day, like, oh, JK, guys, we need to do this instead. Right. And I'm sure it, that, I know, I'm not sure, I know that was also felt by the people that we led.
Yeah.
Right. And so being
Yeah.
able to recognize the need to be honest and authentic and vulnerable with our team and be like, you guys, this kind of blows. No one signed up for this. And here we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. And thank you for being here and coming back.
I mean, absolutely. What's one strategy from the multiplier effect you wish you had known earlier in your leadership journey? How would it have changed your approach?
Yeah. I think when thinking about the multiplier effect, I think it's really hard to pick one strategy, but I think what I would bring it back to is what the book says are the three main beliefs of a multiplier at their core. And this is the concept that I talk about constantly with the PLC leaders. It's what I tell them at every leadership meeting I have with them. If you take nothing away from today, please remember who a multiplier is at their core. So the book says that multipliers at their core believe three things. First of all, that people are smart, that people are capable, that I do not hold all of the answers, and really believing that I am not the solution and that I have to leave space for ownership and innovation and believe in my people that they are capable and smart. The second belief of the multiplier is that intelligence is dynamic, that inherently we all desire to grow and learn. Our intelligence is not fixed. It is dynamic. We need to keep growing. A huge part of that is fostering a culture where mistakes are okay. It's kind of a joke on my team. We always say, there are no emergencies in speech pathology. There are no emergencies, at least not in the schools, maybe in other practices of speech pathology. But I often say, like, there's nothing you can do to sink the ship. Do we want a culture, a team of SLPs that are constantly living in fear that they're going to screw up or make mistakes? Or do we want a culture of SLPs that are willing to put themselves out there and fail in a big way? And then they're going to be surrounded by people that say, oh man, that was hard. Like, let's talk about what happened and what you learned from it and how we can do it better next time. Because that's really how we grow, is by falling down and getting back up. And then finally, a multiplier believes that curiosity sparks intelligence. We have to lead with questions instead of answers. We have to give SLPs space to lean into what they're curious about, to be around other people who are curious about the same things, and give them space to explore that curiosity. Because that is what leads, that's what create that spark of creativity. That's what leads to true innovation and greatness and creativity. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from the book, are those 3 core beliefs as a multiplier. And I really think that if you can lead with those 3 things, if you can, approach the concept of doing more with less in that way, those are really the 3 things that at your core as a leader is going to create a team that is super intelligent and great.
I think as you're summarizing those 3 kind of factors, there's 2 terms that come to mind for me that makes me think that maybe this book should be like highly encouraged to be read by all graduate students, right? And definitely by SLPs practicing in schools. One is zone of proximal development, and then 2 is assuming competence, right? I think those 3 describers of what a multiplier is and how they should, the lenses that they should view the world fall beautifully into those 2 kind of learning theories that we know as SLPs is evidence-based, it's neuro-based, and it works.
So, Natalie, we've talked a lot. Oh, this has been such a great episode, talking about how to support your team using a workload approach that you customized in your district, using the appraisal system to mesh into authentic supervision that's based on strength and an open mindset, therefore improving quality of service to children. You've talked about your values that have remained consistent through time that lead to the capacity for shaping culture in your district. So I want to ask you a very, sounds like shallow question, but here I go. How many vacancies do you have right now for next year? Bam, mic drop. It's you've built a place where people want to come to work, and that was one of your goals. So kudos to you and your leadership team, and to all of the 80 plus team members in Richardson ISD for embracing it, because you have built, because of many hands make light work, you have built products and procedures and systems and tools that make a lighter workload so that we can focus on children. So I'm just so excited about this and pumped up. So thank you, Natalie Crow.
Absolutely.
All right. So we always do a final round of questions. They tend to be more quick fire style.
Oh, gosh, these are the ones that made me the most nervous, I have to tell you.
Good. I like making people nervous, Natalie. We usually get the best answers here. So
I'm
psyched. Because, as part of your SHINE acronym, right, we want that healthy balance, right? And so this is part of the healthy balance, right?
Yes.
So can you share with us a book that's not the multiplier effect or Dare to Lead, a podcast or a song that you just enjoying?
I'm super obsessed with Maggie Rogers right now. I'm loving all of her stuff. Saw her in concert whenever she came a few months back, and that was incredible. So loving Maggie Rogers. I'm reading the book The Women right now by Kristen Hanna about the Vietnam War, the women nurses in the Vietnam War. That's been a really incredible read. Man, hard and sad, but powerful.
Very cool. I have not read that book, but I'll look into it. Maggie Rogers is so cool. You could listen to her driving, cooking, typing a report, whatever it is.
Love her. Love it.
So good.
So good.
Okay, here's the next one. If you had an extra hour in your day, how would you spend it?
Y'all, I have three precious children that are 7, 5, and 4. My husband and I both work full time. He is so incredible. He is so supportive. He has a really demanding job too. And we are always going. And if I had an extra hour, I'm really trying to work on slowing down. So I'm going to say I would just sit in silence, maybe drink my coffee while it's hot.
I love that. I love that. I
Not
think
the most interesting answer, but it's what I need.
it is an honest answer, and I will second that. So,
Yes.
so there's that. All right. So, last question for you. What is leadership to you in one word?
I thought a lot about this question. I mean, I think I would have to say advocacy. I think, advocacy for the SLPs that I know and love constantly. And like, I think sometimes the word advocacy gets a bad rap, right? I think to me, what advocacy is just always sharing about the incredible things that they're doing. Constantly talking about them, advocating for systems that make sense, that do make the work lighter, so that they can find that balance, and they can get there. I think that advocacy is making sure that I'm always telling their story to everyone that'll listen. Yeah, so here I am today talking about it.
I love it. Well, this was delightful. All the best with the end of the school year, and wrapping up this academic year and rolling right on to the next one.
Great. Yes, thanks so much, guys.